in their own right very strong. Tom Ross, of course, playing an aggro deck in Standards where you want him. Austin Bursavich, a winner of an Open with Death's Shadow. Jody Keith, not his first tournament with lands either. We're underway with the game. Keith starts on Thespian Stage. And here's a new card. I said he's going to play a Cycling Land, but actually rather than... He has a Sheltered Thicket and a Tranquil Thicket. This is the Sheltered one. It's the new card from Amonkhet.
Land is not a deck that generally operates very tight on mana. Cycling for 2, a reasonable cost. Fixing both colors pretty good as well.
Yeah, it is nice to have that an extra red source there for your Punishing Fires. Deathrite Shaman from Ben Friedman. It's going to be a play. It's a turn 2 Deathrite Shaman. Do see Exploration, it looks like, in Jody Keith's hand.
That's not one that you would like to have Spell Pierced if you can avoid it.
Right now, he does actually have Dark Depths in hand to go with that Thespian Stage. So even if he gets all his, his cards pierced, countered, whatnot, he does just have that turn 4 20/20.
And Friedman's playing blue-black, not blue-white. There's no Swords to Plowshares here. He'd be drawing to Wasteland if he wanted to disrupt that combo.
So Keith's going to go for Exploration. Ben Friedman has a Force of Will. We'll see if that is enough to have him pull the trigger on it. Yeah, outside of Wasteland, does Ben have any way to stop the 20/20?
Theoretically, depending on timing. He has Jace the Mind Sculptor and Liliana of the Veil, though those are rarely going to matter without the Wasteland.
Ghost Quarter from Jody Keith. He does get another land thanks to Exploration. It's going to be Dark Depths.
There's some matchups where Ghost Quarter is just more Wastelands. This is not really one of those. Friedman does have 2 basic islands and a basic swamp.
We'll go back over to Ben Friedman. And you see some of the difficulties here in game 1. Fatal Push in Ben's hand. Of course, no good here.
Yep. Yeah, Ben really needs a Wasteland here. In theory, he could use Collective Brutality to get to 21 life, and then use a Planeswalker to deal with Merit Lage.
Okay.
That's not a very high percentage play, but it's something that's out there.
Deathrite Shaman, if he could get a creature in the graveyard somehow, Deathrite Shaman could do the same thing. He does actually, despite being blue-black, he has, I believe, 1 Tropical Island in his deck and 1 Bayou to help him make green mana. That's just for Deathrite Shaman's activated ability.
He has a couple Thought Scours. Yeah, this is another long shot.
He'd have to scour over a creature, of which he really doesn't play many, and then exile it to gain life. Wasteland, though, in play for Ben Friedman. That was the card you wanted here. He's going to waste away the Thespian Stage. So he actually has to do this now because of Ghost Quarter, right?
Yeah, Keith can just get rid of that Wasteland and force the action. With Friedman starting things off, Keith has to consider whether or not Ben has Liliana of the Veil. Only 1 copy in the deck.
Yeah, Thespian Stage targeted by Wasteland. Let's see, Jody, he doesn't actually have green mana. I guess he could Ghost Quarter it for green mana if he wanted. He just lets it hit the graveyard instead. There was some thought, right? He could Ghost Quarter it for a forest and then crop rotate the forest if he was really wanting a combo piece. That's a lot of resources.
I'm pretty sure Keith has another Thespian Stage in his hand.
Well, that's just easy then. Yeah, Keith draws here. We have Grove of the Burn Willows. He definitely has another Dark Depths. That's the wrong one, though. So 2 lands here. You're absolutely right. Thespian Stage and Grove of the Burn Willows, and Jody Keith will just pass the turn.
Now, Friedman looking at those same kind of weird niche situations, but would really like one of his other 2 Wastelands.
Yeah, Fatal Push, Force of Will. None of these interact with the combo. Ben will just draw.
And draws Wasteland.
But that's not good enough anymore. I guess if he has Liliana of the Veil and Wasteland, right, he can use Wasteland to force action. Then when Jody makes the 20/20, he can play Liliana and may have Jody sacrifice. He would need them both, and they'd both have to be here right now, though.
And he's not playing at a pace that really sells that there would be a Liliana in his hand.
So he says go. On end step, Jody Keith's going to try to force the combo through. Here is Ghost Quarter targeting Wasteland. If Ben doesn't, so if Ben does nothing here, Jody then will make a 20-20. And doesn't matter. So yeah, Ben is dead to that play. It's really, he doesn't have a line, right? So if he uses the Wasteland there, Jody makes a 20-20 in response. If he lets the Ghost Quarter resolve, then Jody makes the 20-20 afterward.
Yeah, he's really just in trouble in the face of that thespian stage.
So game 1 goes to Jody Keith on lands. We saw this last round, Ben losing a very quick game 1 to the lands deck, but then actually won both his sideboarded games. And that was on the back of cards like 3 copies of Surgical Extraction, and to some degree, cards like Thoughtseize helping here too.
Yeah, Diabolic Edict as a way to get around the combo is significant. Yeah, especially because it's instant speed as opposed to his Planeswalkers.
So a lot of ways to kill the 20-20. Surgical Extraction, great here. We saw when we caught Ben in game 3, he had surgically extracted Thespian Stages out of his opponent's deck.
Yeah.
So he can use them to get rid of Punishing Fires, to get rid of parts of the combo. What I also was impressed by in that game was how, the one we saw last round, was how Gurmag Angler actually proved to be a very good threat against the lands deck.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw Friedman's previous opponent unable to produce a Mazavith to stop that from eating him alive.
So a big welcome to those of you joining us over on Twitch TV. We have, of course, our Twitch subscription program. So from the SCG Tour, you can join us in the feature match area by subscribing to us on our Twitch channel. What that means is that you get to decide the quarterfinals. So that is actually coming up after this round. So when we announce our top 8, we'll give you an option of the top 8 matches we have available on camera. You'll get to vote out of those. How it works is when we have to take about an hour to get the players ready for top 8. So during that time, on screen, we have a list of the matches we can show, and you will have a 15-minute window to vote as to what you want to see. All that comes with being a subscriber, in addition to emoticons and badges, and you can subscribe on our Twitch page at twitch.tv/SCGTour.
This top 8's shaping up to be a sweet one.
You know, and that's just true of so many team events here. We have, a ton of teams that we've seen this weekend. Open winners on most of these teams, actually.
Yeah.
Which is really impressive. You have Chris Anderson, we have Hunter Nance, Nicholas Bird, Todd Stevens, Brennan DeCandio. These players all in top 8 already.
And Andrew Mann, somebody we haven't seen in a short while, but certainly playing a deck he's very familiar with and demonstrating its power this weekend.
Certainly, no matter which team wins this match here, this will be one of the teams that's a favorite to win the event.
Yes. Yeah, 2 extremely strong teams here.
So Ben Friedman looking over at his teammates here. For Ben Friedman, 40-card Friedman can go by. So much success here on the SCG Tour, especially in the invitationals. 5 invitational top 8s. He has 9 regular open top 8s. And this is a player who, doesn't play all the opens. And that's like one of the more impressive parts of it.
His real specialty is ironic clothing items.
Yeah, I mean, that cowboy hat's ridiculous.
I was more looking about the tractor button down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in addition to Metagame Gurus for their 2017 lineup, both he and Frank Skarren joining the team alongside Captain Jim Davis.
Huge pickups for the team. Ben Friedman, a very valuable asset. Frank Skarren as well. 2 very strong limited players, of course, playing Constructed this weekend and putting up great results. Plenty of Constructed success for both players, to be sure.
All right, players cutting. We're going to get ready for the second game here in Legacy. It is Friedman versus Keith. We'll see what pressure Friedman can put on with these surgical extractions. I mean, when we saw Ben Friedman win 2-1 last round, it was a bit of a shock, and I want to see this in action here. We do have our second result in, by the way, on the standard table. Frank Skarren on his blue-white mid-range deck wins game 1 over Tom Ross. I think you figured out Frank Skarren only loses games when he's on camera, and he wins all the other ones.
Just a little camera shy.
Turn 1 Ponder from Ben Friedman.
And among the top 3 cards was a Wasteland. That can be very high impact in this matchup.
Yeah, one of Ben's interactive cards. Go over to Keith. A lot of lands here. Looks like he has both copies of Taiga. I'm deciding how he wants to sequence. He's got a fetch land as well. Just plays Misty Rainforest and passes.
It just hit me that you described the lands player's hand as having a lot of lands. It's kind of a redundant thing to say.
I don't know. I just totally missed that. Second island from Ben Friedman. It does. It's true. He has a lot of lands.
The lands player drew the cards in his deck.
It's like they only play what 35 now.
Yeah, it's come down. The deck used to be, at least for a while, referred to as 42 lands or 43 lands. You know, the literal number of lands in the deck.
Now it's just 35.
A less impressive amount.
It's still like, you know, you talk about how many lands control decks can play. It's like 28, 27 standard. If they're really nice, they go to 29. When you start getting to 35, that's when you give them a glance of, that's too many. You can't. What are you doing?
I'm not into this anymore.
You have to play cards, not in Legacy. This was nice. He fetches for the Sheltered Thicket and then plays Taiga. There was some concern, I think, about that Misty Rainforest running out of targets. He's only got 4 targets for it. Sheltered Thicket, Forest, Taiga, Taiga. So 2 of them were in his opener. And Ben, turn 3, Snapcaster Mage on Ponder.
Not really a show of strength from Friedman. He does need to get a creature onto the battlefield.
I'm not sure what other types of pressure he really presents outside of this. Like, you know, I guess True Name Nemesis would have been nicer.
And now here's something more relevant. Friedman goes for that Ponder, and Jody has Crop Rotation.
Okay.
You have to be careful with Crop Rotation because it is part of the cost of the spell to sacrifice a land.
So when it gets countered, you don't get the land back.
Yeah, it's a real feel bad.
But it looks like it's going to resolve. Jody keeps going through his deck.
Yeah, when you catch your opponent tapped out, it has to be Force of Will.
Yeah, Ben is not a Daze deck. Jody could pay for Daze even if it were. Looks like Thespian Stage might be the call for Jody. You mentioned Ben having Wasteland in his hand.
It's also significant that Jody sacrificed his cycling land to the Crop Rotation.
Sure, that's the one he'd want to loan back if he could.
Exactly.
He's going to get Ghost Quarter. And that's interesting here. So I guess if he'd found a combo piece, this is so good.
Now, Friedman's playing a lot of basic lands.
Yeah.
But Jody's never seen a 3 basic island deck.
Yeah, he's going to Ghost Quarter one of those basic islands. And Ben finds a swamp. Now he's out of basics. That was a really interesting play.
I like that line a lot.
Now, Ben will still get the Ponder.
Yes.
Can just float the blue mana, cast the Ponder.
And from here, Jody looks like he has 1 or maybe 2 Wasteland in his hand.
So he's trying to, looks like he's going for a mana denial plan here. If he can just Wasteland Ben's duels and resolve 1 life from the loam, that will do it.
Yeah, as long as Friedman's not able to set up something like a Jace the Mind Sculptor before you get him off lands, there's not much that he can do that Keith won't be able to manage. Yeah. And then once Keith gets Friedman at a low number of lands, he could just Ghost Quarter these last 2 basics. All he has to do is deal with a Snapcaster Mage. His deck has Punishing Fire, Maze of Ith.
Right. Now, on the other side of things, if Ben does stick a Jace the Mind Sculptor, lands has very few ways to stop that.
That one is much tougher.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Keith has at least 2 Wastelands in his hand. Some help, though, for the Gurus. Jim Davis defeats Austin Bursavich in the first game. That's Dredge over the Death's Shadow. So back Jody Keith plays Wasteland as his land drop for the turn. This will be interesting. Does he use it? He's going to cast Molten Vortex. So that's Magic Origins card. That's going to really... And then Wastelands away Ben's land.
That's going to be a real clean answer to the Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, and actually that's an answer to the Jace you mentioned as well.
Though Friedman is going to have a lot of difficulty getting to that much mana from here. He's wasted down to 2 mana sources.
Right, there's Ben's 2 basics in play. and the last 2 lands in his, those are the last 2 basics in his deck. So Snapcaster Mage will attack. The fight here feels like it's going to be over life from the loam, and maybe that'll work. Ben Friedman has a Surgical Extraction in his hand.
Yeah.
But if Jody gets up to enough lands, right, 4, say 4, he can use that. He can try to protect his loam with a cycling land.
Right.
But speaking of getting up to 4 lands, Jody has 0 right now. Ben using a Wasteland to ensure that. Looks like Ben has another Wasteland at the ready.
Jody would really like to find an exploration here.
Here's Barbarian Ring from Keith. He's just going to have to play out lands for a while and hope that Ben stops blowing them up.
Well, once he gets the Snapcaster Mage off the table, he has a good amount of time to set up.
Sure. Here is Brainstorm from Friedman. A second Surgical Extraction has been picked up.
Yeah, surgicals are reasonably powerful. Remember, though, Jody's list has 4 Ghost Quarter. He's still drawing live to just find the other Ghost Quarters naturally.
Yeah, I guess Ben could Surgical them, but that's not great.
Once you have 2 Surgicals, you can start bullying a little more aggressively, and that could be the line that Ben goes for. These basics are very important.
Yeah, Ben Friedman, 4 Snapcaster Mages, 3 Surgical Extractions, so he can start to run the plan of just Surgicaling everything out of Jody's deck.
Right.
Snapcaster for now will continue to hit. See if Jody wants to maybe discard some cards to Molten Vortex. He's thinking about discarding Dark Depths. Now, if Ben Surgicals that, there's a second Dark Depths in Jody's hand, so it's actually kind of good.
Yeah.
That's what Jody will do. He'll use Molten Vortex, discard Dark Depths, kill Snapcaster Mage. And now there's a combo piece in the graveyard, and we'll see if that is enough to get Ben's attention.
Yeah, with a handful of Surgical Extractions and Snapcaster Mage, you really just want to start casting at some point. That is a very inviting target.
And the Ben is going to Surgically Extract. Yeah, it looks like the Dark Depths, and he is going to get one out of Jody's hand. Jody's hand has 2 more lands and a copy of Life from the Loam.
Well, so now he also sees that he can Surgically Extract Wasteland and get one from Jody's hand as well.
And Taiga.
Sure.
All, you know, you get them all. Now, if he goes that route, that means Life from the Loam, though, won't get Surgicaled, and that might be the card he wants to extract the most.
It matters less if you get rid of all the lands that matter.
If you get rid of, like, Ghost Quarter and Wasteland, then Loam doesn't...
And
if there's no combo, no quarters, and no wastelands, does Loam do anything?
Jody only has 1 land on the battlefield right now. If you get rid of that Taiga, there's no way to cast the Life from the Loam.
Right.
You need a lot of mana to actually leverage the Molten Vortex plus Life from the Loam engine.
Be interesting to see. So Ben has 1 more extraction in hand. He has 3 more Snapcasters in his deck. I don't know if any of them are actually in his hand right now. You know, once he gets them, he has every Snapcaster Mage as another Surgical Extraction. You see Ben carefully going through Jody's deck. He's gone through it a couple of times. He's mapping out a game plan for what he can and cannot safely extract.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured. Is there a combination of cards that I can extract that makes it very difficult for Jody to win from here? And goes for a Misty Rainforest here, not electing to waste Jody off of this last land, and giving it a good think over whether he wants a Surgical or not. And he does seem to have 2 more Snapcaster Mage in his hand.
So he can Surgical 4 times here? Okay, so now he's going to extract the Taigas. Yeah, if he has 4 Surgicals at the ready, you know, he's going to sculpt an entire game plan around this. That makes sense.
With this non-basic land entering the battlefield, you have to figure he's going for the Wasteland as well.
Okay, so first he took the Dark Depths, so that the combo element, you know, the easy wins from Joe's deck are gone, Jody's deck. Now, the Surgicaling the 2 Taigas is a much more aggressive plan. It's only the 2 cards in his deck. He got the one in the graveyard, and more importantly, he got a card out of Jody's hand. Now, he's going for a 3rd one, and we'll see what that one's targeting. Or actually, no, the Snapcaster did the 2nd. He might be holding off on the 3rd. Jody will draw. If there were time to surgical again, it would be during Jody's draw step. And had he would have gotten 2 wastelands. Jody drawing another wasteland. Jody will waste Ben's dual land off. Ben knew about that. He doesn't know that Jody has another wasteland in hand. Hits for 2. Keith down to 14. Diabolic Edict, Snapcaster Mage, Wasteland, Underground Sea. For Friedman, he'll waste away Jody's Barbarian Ring, back down to 0 lands. And Jody passes go. Jody draws. Mox Diamond is the draw. That's not great here.
Yeah, with Snapcaster Mage on the battlefield, another one coming down. Jody now off of red mana.
Yeah.
No real need to surgical away the wasteland.
Yeah, I mean, and Jody might try for Diamond here. Yeah, he's going to play Mox Diamond, see if it resolves. It does. He discards Wasteland. And now he has red mana for Vortex and green mana for that Loam as his last card. I do like that. Go back to Friedman. Draws. 3rd land hits for 2. Keith down to 12. Remember, 2 more surgicals for Ben if he wants them. Jody needs to hit a land to try for life from the Loam. Not sure he did. Looks like he did not. So Ben Friedman, Snapcaster Mage on Brainstorm on end step. Draws Brainstorm, fetch land, 1 other. Looks like he's going to shuffle. He's going to keep a surgical extraction.
Yeah, look, there was just 2 fetch lands going back in time.
And he'll start attacking. Keith's down to 8. This is becoming real. But 1 land for life from the Loam is all it takes for Jody Keith. He picks up 2 lands and he can start discarding them all to Molten Vortex.
Does require a pretty serious mana investment.
Yeah, he'll need the untapped land this turn, right? It'll be land, Loam, get back lands. And really, he'd need his land to make red mana.
Right.
If he had a very low life total. Lands actually does not play life gain. So.
Yeah, usually the way that this deck gains life is when your opponent Swords to Plowshares your Merit Lage.
Right.
None of that in this matchup.
Thought Scar targeting Keith. Gamble and Grove of the Burn Willows into the yard. Ben draws.
Like that target there. Might find something he wants to surgical.
Yeah, I mean, if he had milled life from the Loam, that would have been a game over, right? So yeah, I'll surgical that. Take the one in your hand. And this is the hard part. Jody Keith's Loam is going to, if he draws the land for it, it's going to get surgicaled. Here's Thespian Stage, casting life from the Loam. Keith's going to get 3 lands back. It's the only ones he'll get back, though. The Loam's going to be gone after this. If Ben wants it, Ben can surgically extract it.
Right.
So with Loam on the stack, it's going to be Brainstorm from Ben Friedman. You can see if he can counter it. Looks like he cannot. Hand is Thoughtseize, Surgical Extraction, Diabolic Edict, and land.
Yeah, and not being able to counter this is fine.
All right, so if Jody gets his, I guess, Loams are gone, combo's gone. I guess he can still win with Punishing Grove. Until those are gone too. And then he's in real trouble. He's going to play another Mox Diamond. See what Keith wants to discard. He's got Sheltered Thicket, but not enough mana to cycle it here, so Keith's going to discard, it looks like. Yeah, he's trying to decide. Is going to be the cycling land, the Sheltered Thicket, to make another Mox Diamond, so back to Ben Friedman. He'll continue to develop his mana. With that 5th land, Ben can start to hardcast Force of Will if he draws one.
Not really what this game is about anymore, but
yeah, I mean, lands at this point are kind of just tools for to reset Brainstorms for Ben. You know, I don't know if a 5th mana does much for him. Ponder from Friedman. Still looking, I guess Jace the Mind Sculptor would be a great find. And speak of it, there he is. Yeah, he's going to just draw that. And A cast of Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to be very good here. It's going to try to hit Keith down to 4. Now, if he wants to surgically extract the Loam, he's got to make sure he doesn't let Jody untap. If there's another Sheltered Thicket, well, he discarded it. So I guess he knows his hand. There's no cycling in it.
Right.
Looks like from Keith, Molten Vortex is going to take care of a Snapcaster Mage. He's going to try to keep himself at just 6 as he discards the, looks like the Ghost Quarter. He's still deciding.
You know, frequently with these blue decks and Legacy, with all the Ponders and Brainstorms, you'll see a very small number of sideboard cards. The way that Ben's deck is configured, not only is he very heavy on surgical extraction, but the Snapcaster Mage gives him so much redundancy. It's kind of absurd how much stuff he's insulated against right now. Even a lot of what Jody is up to, he could have already gone for a surgical on some number of things. You know, restricted what could have gotten back from the Life from the Loam. Now he has the option to surgical the Life from the Loam himself if he even wants to.
Right now, Jace the Mind Sculptor is played by Ben, and he'll Brainstorm. This game's going much better for him, and he will surgical out Life from the Loam. Shows Grove of the Burn Willows in Jody's hand. Loams are gone. Jace is on the table. Jace is at 3, so if Jody draws another land, he can throw his hand away to remove Jace. And he probably has to.
Yeah.
I'm a little interested that if that's the case, that Ben brainstormed as opposed to plussing.
Yeah, plussing
to kind of
does
keep it out of range.
from that.
Yeah, if you plus every turn, maybe it can't die.
His plan to win this game looks to be damage.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, the Snapcaster Mage is pretty easy to remove with the Vortex.
Looks like it might have been crop rotation also from Jody Keith. That's a pretty poor draw right now.
Yeah.
Or make that exploration. And Keith says, didn't draw the land to remove the Jace, so that's going to be the game. And Ben Friedman, this is his 3rd game in a row. He's 3-0 post-board against lands recently. This is impressive stuff.
Yeah, this heavy surgical Snapcaster Mage sideboard plan is very powerful. I mean, Snapcaster Mage is in the main deck, whatever, but
yeah, Thoughtseizes, surgicals. Yeah, I mean, and we've seen some of this in Legacy before, but what I think I like out of Ben in this matchup are the quantities. It's not just, you know, we'd see like sometimes a couple Snapcaster Mages and Miracles. It is 4 Snapcaster Mages, 3 surgical extractions. It's huge numbers on both.
Right. Yeah, a lot of Legacy sideboards are 1s and 2s, the occasional 3, but Friedman knows he wants a lot of this effect.
So Ben Friedman evens things up in Legacy, but Tom Ross repays the favor. He evens the standard matchup with Frank Skarren. At 1 game apiece, they are going to go to game 3 as well. You know, see Jim Davis, Austin Bursavich. They're still in game 2 here in Modern. It's Dredge versus Death's Shadow. Surprisingly, Dredge, the most popular Modern deck here on day 2 of our Team Open.
Last time that Dredge was the most represented deck in Modern tournaments, they banned Golgari Grave Troll. Pretty recent memory, actually. But yeah, Dredge still a very powerful deck in the format. A little strange to see it be as popular as it is. You know, last time we were covering Modern, you know, Austin Bursavich was winning the Open with Death Shadow. There really wasn't much in the way of Dredge there, but plenty of diehard. Pilots very attached to the deck. It's a style of gameplay that some players are really drawn to, and it's also a style of strategy that a lot of players are repulsed by. I find no joy in playing against Dredge, but I at least like beating it still. That's the line for me when I don't even like winning against a deck.
I do like how unique the deck is. You know, you know, it's got that going for it where you're like, man, this really doesn't feel like any other deck right now.
Yes, it's very unique. I've played a little bit of Dredge in Vintage. I haven't touched it in the other formats. I like Grave Troll as sort of like a draw 6. That aspect is what appeals to me.
Oh, that's great.
The stuff popping in and out of the graveyard, that's whatever. But the fact that I'm looking at 6 cards that might matter, that's what I'm signing up for. Yeah, in Modern, you see a lot fewer cards, a lot less stuff that's castable from the graveyard. I'd consider Legacy Dredge if it was better positioned. I like Cabal Therapy a lot. The fact that there's so many main deck Deathrite Shamans is pretty unfortunate.
That is a deck that's really fallen off in in Legacy in the last year. You know, Storm has kept on as a combo deck, but Dredge in particular, we don't see much at our opens now.
Well, the impact of Deathrite Shaman on the Legacy format is extremely dramatic. Relative to other cards, it's certainly within the top 5 most impactful. Might even be second, or I guess second or third. Probably it's Brainstorm, Force of Will, Deathrite Shaman, something like that.
We have game 3 here, Keith versus Friedman. Keith will be back on the play. Now, one thing last game we saw, Jody did not have Exploration or anything like that, or Mox Diamond. He actually just played 1 land per turn. That certainly seems to matter. And he's going to keep a 7 here, just starting on Ghost Quarter, though. No Diamond, no Exploration. This was not good enough last game. We see Deathrite Shaman now from Ben Friedman. A Diamond does show up, though, for Keith on the 2nd turn, so he gets some acceleration. He's got Wasteland, it looks like, for Ben's basic, or Ben's Underground Sea if he wants. See if he has a kill spell for Deathrite Shaman as well. It's going to be Mox Diamond where he starts.
That one will usually not invite a Force of Will.
There's also some concern here. Looks like Depths and Stage are in Keith's hand, so he might just discard the Wasteland, play 1 half of Stage Depths, play the other half, and you know, put Ben to the test. Did you draw a Wasteland?
Right. Post-sideboard also, Diabolic Edict an option.
Right, 2 copies of that in Ben's sideboard. Jody's going to discard Thespian Stage, play Thespian Stage. I do like that it does play around Surgical Extraction by immediately playing it, and Jody will then loam back Thespian Stage. There is a Surgical Extraction in Ben's hand. This is an interesting spot. And Jody knows this. He's inviting Ben, this is interesting, to Surgical away his life from the loam.
So here's a weird one.
Yeah.
What if Jody just has the Thicket, Tranquil Thicket in his hand, and just Ghost Quarters himself to find basic forest and can cycle that in response to Surgical Extraction?
Ooh, I like that.
Looking at the cards, I don't think that's what's up, but it's something that Friedman has to consider.
Yeah, what it looks like Jody actually has is redundant copies of Depth Stage. His hand is Wasteland, Dark Depths, another Thespian Stage. So basically, he's just going to play lands and force this combo through. Now, he doesn't know about Diabolic Edict from Ben Friedman, and if Ben has one, he could really catch Jody here.
That's been pretty common technology for a while. I assume that a savvy pilot like Jody has that on his radar.
It's on his radar. He may not play around it because he simply can't.
Yeah.
And it does not look like Ben has it. Ben has a Jace, Ben has a Surgical Extraction, a Force of Will, and an extra blue card. These are all great tools, but if Jody just simply makes lands, makes combo, I don't think any of those play.
Right.
And Jody's setting up to do just that.
Ben at least gets to shuffle some of these extra lands away, get a fresh look at some cards, hope to find that Diabolic Edict.
And I guess Ben doesn't have to Surgical the Life from the Loam. He could just use Deathrite Shaman to exile it. Either way, I don't think Jody's making it to his draw step with Loam in the graveyard.
Yeah, it does not appear likely that there will be dredging of that one here.
And after the Brainstorm, Ben will reset the deck. Another Underground Sea, and that can now go for the Life from the Loam. Davis and Bursavich in game 2. Skarren and Ross, game 3. We use many of these matches as we can. And exile of Life from the Loam from Ben Friedman.
And Jody just exiles that straight away. Nothing fancy here, just going back to his turn. So Sphere of Resistance off the top for Keith.
Interesting. I'm not sure I'd expected to see that one.
It's a pretty powerful effect against Snapcaster Mage.
So it's going to be Exploration from Keith. That's going to hit a Force of Will from Friedman. This does mean that Jody's actually set himself back a turn on making a 20/20.
Can be reasonably content to just Wasteland on this turn.
Cast Sphere of Resistance. And then Wasteland Ben. All right, that seems great. So Sphere of Resistance, all spells cost 1 more.
Makes it difficult for Friedman to cast Jace the Mind Sculptor.
It's even an answer here against possibly an answer against the Diabolic Edict, but that he gave Ben an extra turn is going to come back to get him. Ben played a 2-mana Brainstorm, and he drew double Wasteland here. And he can't know it, but Jody just played the combo last turn. It looked like he was in the clear.
Right. It would be quite aggressive to go for it.
He would have to, right, he would have had to have just played the combo and then immediately made the 20/20, not, because if he waits, Ben just plays a Wasteland. So, you know, there was a line to make it work. Is it reasonable for Jody to take that line?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
And what the Sphere accomplishes, if Friedman goes for a Wasteland on this turn, he won't be able to pay 1 to cast a Surgical Extraction.
Okay. Well, there's nothing really in Jody's yard that needs to be extracted just yet. Ben plays a Wasteland.
Ben would love to extract Thespian Stage.
Sure. We go over back to Jody Keith. Now, over on the Modern table, everything's going to game 3. Austin Bursavich evens it up with Jim Davis. You see his Bursavich looking over at his teammate Legacy game.
And Jody considering a Tabernacle here. That's really good against Deathrite Shaman, especially when you have Sphere of Resistance on the battlefield.
He's going to play, looks like Thespian Stage. And he'll cast Punishing Fire for 3 on Deathrite Shaman. I love that.
That one's also good against Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, Ben has Wasteland, Jace. Yeah, that's Deathrite Shaman's down. Now, Ben's got to think twice about Wastelanding here. I guess he can Wasteland Surgical away. There's 2 stages in play. I was thinking Wasteland Surgical the stage.
And the existence of Surgical, that certainly informed Jody's play there.
Yeah.
That second Thespian Stage on the battlefield is pretty important with that being the case.
All right. Surgical Session gets all the cards from the graveyard, hand, and deck, but not the battlefield. Ben has a second Wasteland, a Surgical Extraction. He has Jace the Mind Sculptor, but that's going to cost 5 mana due to Sphere of Resistance. Some good news, though, for the Gurus over on the Standard match. It is Frank Skarren in 3, a 2-1 winner over Tom Ross. So a win here from Ben Friedman will take care of things.
Friedman in a little bit of a tough spot, but this game is very close.
Right, Jody can't yet. Well, I guess he does have the combo. He can try to make a 20/20 here. He has the combo with a backup Ghost Quarter in play. We saw that in game 1, where that was kind of a checkmate against Ben.
Yep.
It's much closer here, though. Ben has a second Wasteland in hand. Also, now that we're in post-board games, there's some concern about Diabolic Edict. And you see, Jody,
not an easy decision.
No, so he played Dark Depths, and you see he was reaching for that Ghost Quarter. He could main phase make a 20/20. And actually, that would work here. It's the right play for Jody. And he's going to make it. Hits Wasteland. He's not respecting Diabolic Edict here, but Ben doesn't have it.
Yeah. It's unclear that he's able to win a game where he respects Diabolic Edict on top of that.
So Ben is going to let himself get Wastelanded and go get a basic, and that's strong. This means if Ben top decks Liliana of the Veil, he'll have the 4 mana he'll need to cast her. Gets a basic island.
That puts him at 3 total Edict effects in his deck, but under the Sphere of Resistance, he won't be able to cantrip into it. You know, you can't like draw Ponder and that be a relevant redraw.
Right, everything costs 1 more. And now with that out of the way, you think Jody's going to make a 20/20. This is he's shoving his hand all in at this point, though. If Ben has an Edict or a Liliana, this is bad for Jody.
Really not able to play any other way, though.
Yeah, if he was going to, but if he main phased the Ghost Quarter, you think he would go for this here, right? If he was trying to play around a Wasteland, he wouldn't have done this main phase. There is a Wasteland in Ben's hand, too.
Yep.
So if Jody passes the turn, he loses the control on the 20/20.
Yeah, it makes sense to go for this on Friedman's upkeep if you're going to do it at all. Just so if Friedman has Diabolic Edict, you tax 3 mana on his turn.
Loam is the card in Jody's hand as well. Thinking, all right, well, if he goes for it, and Ben has a way to remove it, the 2020, and Surgical's away Jody's Dark Depths, he's quite possibly going to lose the game.
And once he goes for it, the Thespian stage, the Dark Depths, he won't have mana to cast Light from the Loam without drawing a land because of the Sphere of Resistance.
Right. He actually just says go and now waits, and during Ben's turn, draw step makes 2020. All right. So here's the 2020. Ben needs a Liliana or a Diabolic Edict to deal with this. So now in upkeep, Ben will crack a fetch land to get one more losing card out of the deck and hope that he can get there.
Yep, so this is a huge draw step for Friedman here. It's a 3-outer.
And because that Sphere Resistance, there are, as you mentioned, there are no redraws. Can he hit? That looks like a land from Ben. I think he missed on the 3-outer. We'll confirm that when he plays land 4. Yeah, he said can't play the Jace due to the Sphere. And just a shake of the hands, it is Jody Keith winning the sideboard game. So a match for Jody's team in Legacy, but a match for the Gurus in Standard. It's going to, which seems like for the 3rd time today, come down to Jim Davis's match.
That was really impressive navigation by Jody Keith there. He really leveraged that Sphere Resistance. If you kind of go back to that turn where he leads on Exploration and then goes into Sphere, Friedman's tapped out. It looks like, oh, he should have led with Sphere so he could resolve Exploration, but the important card was the Sphere.
Right.
It turned off the redraw potential in the last turn. It made Snapcaster Surgical Extraction not a very powerful option, really mana inefficient option. That was really very impressively leveraged by Jody.
Very much. All right, so once again, it's going to come down to Jim Davis's match in Legacy. This is Dredge versus Abzan Shadow, already underway.
And a Grafdigger's Cage on turn 1.
Yeah, off basic Swamp, though, for Austin. It's a bit unusual. So Austin at a rare 20 life points, knocked down now to 19.
He's got a lot of cards in hand. If he mulliganed, he didn't mulligan too deep.
Now Austin's going to start dealing some damage to himself. Goes down to 17. And we'll see if he has another land. He's put a lot of stock in Grafdigger's Cage here, it looks like. Plays tapped Godless Shrine, says go. That's unusual for the Abzan Shadow deck to do that with their lands, even when they have nothing to cast.
Yeah, it's looking like he's just entirely off of green here and might feel like he's going to have to take a lot of shots before he's able to cast a spell.
That's that. Jim's just going to play a Stinkweed Imp on 3 mana. That one does trade with cards like Death Shadow and Tarmogoyf.
And halves the clock. Neonate Stinkweed Imp beat down.
Yeah, and this is why Austin kept such a slow hand. With Grafdigger's Cage in play, creature cards can't enter the battlefield from graveyards on either side, but it's going to matter on Jim's. Also, Jim cannot cast cards from his graveyard, so Faithless Looting, only the first half of that's okay. Jim can still dredge his cards, but the main thing this will contain is Bloodghast, Prized Amalgam, and Narcomoeba are all not going to play very much. Austin just says go. Jim dredges 5 for another Stinkweed Imp. We see this in Legacy sometimes. It's a swing for 2 from Jim. He has Austin down to 14. Can he win through a cage? It's not pretty.
Yeah, and Austin has this very impactful sideboard card, but he's kept a hand that looks incapable of otherwise playing Magic.
Yeah, he does look like he has Lingering Souls in hand. So, you know, he's got some great answers if he can get to those cards. Keep in mind, he can't flash back Lingering Souls.
Yeah.
And Dismember on Stinkweed Imp. Austin will pay 2 life. He paid for one of those Phyrexian mana and paid 2 life for the other one, so he goes down to 14. or 13, another Stinkweed Imp from Jim. Austin went down to 14 from the Dismember, 13 from the Neonate.
And there's a green source off the top. Fetch land for Bursavich.
Austin does have another basic land in his deck. He can go get that. We see Tarmogoyf in hand. Looks like Painful Truths, Lingering Souls. Jim is likely, his onboard play is to every turn dredge Stinkweed Imp and cast it.
Yep.
The question is, can Austin beat that? His creatures are actually very poor at getting through Stinkweed Imp.
Yes. He's going to have to find a way to deal a lot of damage in 1 or 2 turns. Stinkweed Imp does a great job at getting in front of Tarmogoyf and Death Shadow. He can go a little bit wide with Lingering Souls, but again, he can't flash it back. He just has to cast it 3 mana. It's a sorcery speed Midnight Haunting. And there is Lingering Souls there for Bursavich, and he's a little bit above 10. Jim has a couple Blood Gas in his hand. They don't have haste just yet, but he's pretty close to applying a lot of pressure very quickly.
Right, a swing is going to be a double block, looks like, with Lingering Souls tokens on the Stinkweed Imp. It means 1 damage will come through with Insolent Neonate. And you're right, as soon as Austin's at 10, these Blood Ghasts do have haste. Once they die, they're done. They can't come back.
Right.
Now, Stinkweed Imp can come back because it's going from the graveyard to Jim's hand to the battlefield. So that gets around Grafdigger's Cage. From Jim, it's going to be Bloodghast, no haste, cast a life from the loam, getting back 2 more lands. And another fetch land, and then he'll pass.
Now there's a lot of pressure on Bursavich to get some blockers in the way. Get in front of this Bloodghast and this Neonate. He still has a lot of life to play with. You know, the Stinkweed Imp is a little bit tougher to deal with. Just being able to get in front of the Bloodghast is not too difficult. Getting another creature so he can get in front of the Neonate, that is significant as well. And here's Traverse the Ovenwald for Bursavich. As an Overgrown Tomb is the find. Possibly needs multiple green mana sources there. And Tomb will enter the battlefield untapped. And there's a Tarmogoyf. Davis going to crack that Scalding Tarn end step. With the Grafdigger's Cage in play, triggering these Bloodghast, not really a thing. Getting lands on the deck is whatever.
He's got Bursavich down to 9, though.
Can't, like, set up a big Conflagrate either because the mode that cares about discarding cards is uncastable. And, you know, sometimes you might want to cast a Conflagrate for X = 3 for 7 mana.
Yeah, so then it starts being like, you know, how many mana-producing lands does he have? Conflagrate actually is a reasonable draw here. So Jim's going to continue to dredge Stinkweed Imps.
At some point, you have to be concerned about how many times you can dredge Stinkweed Imp without decking yourself.
Right, if it's you can't actually do it every turn. And he'll play Stinkweed Imp and Bloodghast. The Bloodghast has haste because Bursavich is at 9. Stinkweed Imp has flying. Neonate has menace. But Jim's going to go the reserved route. No attacks, it looks like. And go back to Bursavich's turn. And he can start to assemble some shields here. He's got another Tarmogoyf. But Painful Truths, I'm not sure he can cast that one.
Yeah, Painful Truth is a little dicey from here.
And teams are going to approach time. Now, just what is on the line here, there looks to, in our standings here, we have 6 teams locked, drawing into top 8. The loser of this match will be out for tie-break contention. The winner is going to have a tiebreaker fight to get in. Looks like we'll have 2 teams maybe 3 teams in a tie for 8th place. So the winner of this will certainly be one of them. As Bursavich's turn looks to be turn 0, we'll confirm that with the judge. It's going to fetch down to 6 and play Death's Shadow. Remember, Bloodghasts can't block, so Fate will push away the Stinkweed Imp.
This will allow, at least force a block from the Neonate on the Tarmogoyf if Bursavich decides to get aggressive.
Right, and I do like getting the Neonate out because Jim can only really play 1 blocker a turn. Now, Bursavich swings Tarmogoyf here. Well, I guess the question is, can he swing Tarmogoyf here?
Yeah, you don't just want to get killed by a Bloodghast Conflagrate for 2. Davis has some life to play with. If the Tarmogoyf swings, he can also just take it.
Yeah, and it's going to be a swing with both. No possible blocks for Jim on the Spirit token. We'll see if he wants to chump block the Tarmogoyf. Thinking it's at least 4 here. We'll get an exact count on it from the players, but it's an amount of damage that Jim can take.
Yeah, seeing instant sorcery creature land for sure.
Yeah, Austin's follow-up is a Death's Shadow and another Tarmogoyf here. You see Tarmogoyf is a 4/5. So this is a swing for 5. He'll put Jim to 9. And determines that's not, he can't do that one. So he'll block Tarmogoyf before damage, use Insolent Neonate's ability to discard and draw. And the draw will dredge Stinkweed Imp. So he actually does have enough mana to play 2 Stinkweed Imps here. He has the 6th land in hand. He can dredge another one. 1 damage puts Jim to 13. And then there are those 2 follow-up creatures, Tarmogoyf and Death's Shadow from Bursavich. So Jim's turn. This is going to be turn number 1. Upkeep, deciding, can he afford, if he dredges Stinkweed Imp, he'll play Imp, Land, Imp. Their team has said, does that win? And if it doesn't, he probably has to take a draw. There's 1 Maelstrom Pulse left in his deck. He might just have to hit it.
Yeah, when he dredged, that first Maelstrom Pulse was the 2nd from the top, so he wasn't going to draw that one anyway.
If he can top deck naturally Maelstrom Pulse, that hitting both Tarmogoyfs should certainly give him the draw if he wants it.
Legacy Challenge players, your parents or
yeah, pretty important decision here. You're pretty low odds to hit the Maelstrom Pulse, but if your sure thing isn't good enough, you can't go for it.
You don't want to go down a road that leads to the wrong place, even if it's a really clear one.
I can do this thing for sure and lose for sure. Not where you want to be.
Till dredge Stinkweed Imp. Thug, Amalgam, Land, Conflagrate, Land. So the 2nd Pulse still in his deck. He does have to shock to 11 to play 2 Stinkweed Imps here. He'll play them both. Those 2 Bloodghasts, though, not doing much in the face of Austin's creatures as we go to turn 2. That's Bursavich's turn. Grim Flayer the draw. See Tom Ross and Jody Keith looking on. And what is this for 3 mana? If this is Pulse of his own, it's going to be Painful Truths. Bursavich down to 3. I like the style. We'll confirm, yeah, it's for 3. He could have gone 2 if he wanted, but no, he'll take the extra card.
Once you have enough blockers for Jim's board.
Well, he doesn't really, not in the air at least.
The Flyers deal some damage, but once the Flyers attack, Bursavich's board is just lethal.
Right.
And the Stinkweed Imps are not lethal.
I guess with... Yeah, this is... We'll see what Bursavich hit. It's... He's got to watch out about Conflagrate, too. We see some number of them are in Jim's graveyard, but if he top decks a Conflagrate at this point, it's probably the game.
Yeah, looks like 2 are in the graveyard. Jim 1 land shy of being able to naturally Conflagrate for 3.
Yeah, with 4 attackers.
Flyer will punch through, though.
Yeah, with 4 attackers, he can probably find a way to get that last point in if he draws it.
An attack with all 3 of Bursavich's creatures, or even Death Shadow plus a Tarmogoyf, forces at least 1 block with the Stinkweed Imp. Both Tarmogoyfs are not lethal on their own, however, is the problem.
Yeah. The discussion in Virtue's team, it looked like he has Grim Flayer and Fatal Push as cards in his hand. Now he has this attack and one more attack. And they're trying to figure out which way is the best way to deal damage here. Fatal Push will allow more attacks this turn, but then the Grim Flayer on the last turn of the game, that's not really a card. Grim Flayer will make for a better turn 4.
The other dicey thing about how much Bursavich wants to attack this turn is those Blood Gas do a lot better job of attacking than blocking.
So swing with 2 Tarmogoyfs and Death's Shadow from Austin Bursavich. Well, the Death's Shadow, as a 10-10, it's got to get blocked.
Pretty powerful for a 1-mana creature.
Yeah. Jim's trying to decide if he can block just the Shadow, or whether he has to block a Shadow into Tarmogoyf. So Stinkweed Imp in front of Death Shadow seems like a given right now.
Yes.
But what about the other imp?
Alternatively, you could put Stinkweed Imps in front of both Tarmogoyf. That play seems worse than just blocking the Shadow.
Shadow's just bigger. It's the best creature of Austin's.
There's also just that lurking possibility that Bursavich has a Street Wraith in hand.
Right. Also, if he blocks Shadow, it gives him that Maelstrom Pulse out a lot better. So see from Jim's side. I'm inclined to think he going low here is good. It helps him with, yeah, and that's what he comes to the same conclusion. Just Stinkweed Imp in front of Death Shadow. The Tarmogoyfs are 4/5s. They're confirmed. They have instant, sorcery, land, creature. Jim will drop to 3. So 3 life points each now for Davis and Bursavich. 3 attackers on Jim's side, just 1 blocker for Bursavich. And he'll cast Grim Flayer. Did not play the Fatal Push. He's hoping next turn. With Jim at 3, Fatal Push plus Grim Flayer is probably good enough. Whatever Jim blocks the Flare with, Austin can push it, and the trample damage will kill Jim.
Yep. Yeah, 4/4 trample, pretty strong against an opponent on 3 life.
Yeah, especially when you can remove that blocker. Not to mention these 2 Tarmogoyfs still around. Team saying, okay, play land, not play land, does it matter? Plays tapped Overgrown Tomb. And so now Jim is going to need a top deck here. Can he hit Conflagrate? That will win. That might just be it. Maelstrom Pulse I don't think is a win anymore.
Now with the Grim Flayer, that one not really good anymore.
Jim looks at the card and sets it back down. That doesn't feel like a Conflagrate.
No, it'd be pretty rude if it was.
Anything else that can burn? 3 or stabilize, maybe 3 life points for Jim Davis.
Can't imagine this was deemed to be a collective brutality matchup.
In previous iterations, this is where Jim would have started just casting Grave Trolls, but those are gone now.
Those would be mighty large.
Yeah. Yeah, collective brutality would be lethal. Vengeful Pharaoh.
Don't see this one cast very often.
I still don't think it's lethal, but a really interesting card to have drawn. Check whether or not Bursavich has Delirium. I believe he does, though.
He's previously successfully traversed and nothing has changed.
Okay.
The Vengeful Pharaoh is just 1 more blocker. Yeah, that's not going to do it.
That's going to be the win. It's Austin Bursavich, Jody Keith, and Tom Ross picking up the win.